My people, welcome back to your favorite show, U&I Talk show with Louise UWACU. This week, my people, we're having a bold conversation. It's about the man. My people, thank you for being here today. Men, talking about men with Connor BEATON. Thank you so much. Very good looking man. Looking so manly. You know, you're the kind of man that women look like and they're like, yeah, definitely man.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Wow. So you're the founder of MANTALKS.
Yes.
We didn't even know that men were talking.
I know, right? That's the whole, it's like a surprise.
Yeah.
It's a surprise party.
So men talk.
Yeah.
And what are they talking about?
Oh, well, see, that's the thing, is that we're trying to have a different type of conversation than what most men are having. You know, most men, you know, the average guy is talking about sports, they're talking about girls, they're talking about, you know, booze and partying and that kind of stuff, right? Or business. And what we're trying to do is redefine the conversations that men are having with each other, so that they're having real conversations. Mm-hmm. They're talking about the things that actually matter in their life, like how to be a better husband, how to be a better father, how do they do those things, and what's stopping them? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
is this because you realized that there was some sort of crisis with men? Is the man going through a crisis?
It's a really good question. I think there's two sides to it, right? I think yes, from my own personal story, I went through some stuff that basically, when I came out the other side and I started being real and honest with people, and telling my guy friends about what I had actually been going through, I was met with the real stuff that was actually going on in their life. Mm-hmm. You know, so I was met with these struggles that they were going through. Mm-hmm. And I started to see that a lot of guys were really having a tough time. Mm-hmm. And, you know, whether it's here in Canada or in the States or in Europe or wherever they are, they're struggling to really have the real conversations with their wives, with their business partners. And yeah, so it was a realization that there are some guys that are struggling out there. Mm-hmm.
So what kind of issues were you going through? Did you get dumped? Or what?
No.
That's when you start
right?
thinking.
Yeah.
You know?
It's just like, it wasn't that simple. I had this kind of like cool life where it looked like on paper, I was an opera singer, so I was a classical musician. And
you were an opera singer?
Yeah, I was an opera singer.
We may get to do you something.
Oh, yeah. So I was an opera singer, and on paper it looked like I had this really cool life. But behind the scenes, I was really struggling with depression. And you know, I had really isolated myself from the people around me. And I kept everybody at arm's reach, because as a man, we're really taught that we need to figure it out by ourselves. Like, we need to figure it out. And if you don't do that, then you're not a man, mm-hmm. right? And so, you know, I had this great life, I had a great relationship on the outside, but on the inside I was really struggling. And, you know, everything kind of fell apart because of that. I made bad decisions, and you know, struggled with addiction, struggled with depression, and everything. You know, I sort of hit that rock bottom moment where everything fell apart. In my job, my career, my partner, it all happened, and I was so proud that I ended up living out of my car for a couple of weeks.
You ended up living in your car?
Yeah.
I mean, even parking is expensive in Vancouver, so I don't know, where were you parking your car?
It was like way out in the boons. Yeah, I just didn't want to tell anybody. I didn't want to tell anybody what was going on.
Oh my goodness, because you know, we live in a society where you're supposed to be the man.
That's right.
You're not supposed to have any weaknesses whatsoever.
That's right.
You're definitely not supposed to be crying.
No, none of that.
You know, how do men actually deal with their stuff, you know?
Yeah, yes, I mean, it's a good question. I think what I realized was, after sort of everything fell apart and I, you know, dropped the ego, let my pride go, I really realized that when I started having real conversations with other men and with other women, and I just kind of like told the truth on myself, that's when people met me with what was actually going on in their life. Mm-hmm. And so really, like, the solution is just to talk about it, mm-hmm. you know, to have real conversations instead of like the fake surface level stuff.
I see. But Are men allowed to do that? Or the moment you start talking as a man, are they saying, oh, you're getting in touch with your female side?
It's true. It's very interesting how it's met. I think the approach that we're taking is that we're finding guys that are already making a difference in the world, right? So we're finding men that have, a little bit of credibility and reputation, and getting them to share authentically with some of the major challenges that they faced in building their businesses. So men that are like seen as public icons, right? So by doing that, we kind of break down the stereotypes a little bit, that, it's girly to talk about the real stuff that's going on in your life. And we kind of just disassemble that so that it's okay. We create a space that's okay to have that type of conversation.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying you have been crying?
Not today, no. No, not at all. No, but I mean, you know what? So what we do is we put on an event, right? And I will find men, like we have an event coming up on April 9th with Ryan Holmes, the founder of Hootsuite. And we find guys like that who are a bit of like an icon in the city. And we get them to talk about the journey of how they built what they built in a very open and raw way, where they can talk about the challenges that they face, not just the highlights, not just like, this is how I built $1 billion business. It's like, this is what I went through personally in order to do that.
Yeah, because people always look at the finished products instead of looking at the entire process of what it actually took to get there.
Totally.
Wow, okay, we're gonna take a short break and then come back and keep talking about it. U&I Talk Show with Louise UWACU. We love you, the authors, the musicians, the comedians, the entrepreneurs, and all other talented and inspiring people. Please contact info@uwacu.com to be a guest on the show. All right, my people, we're back still talking about men to a man. Because women get together and we talk about you guys.
I know. I know. It's funny, like I actually took a page out of your book, right? And, not your book specifically, but the female book, where women are very communal, right? And they have these incredible support networks that help them achieve and process, divorce or loss or, whatever transition they're going through in their life. And, men used to have that hundreds of years ago when we were a little bit more tribal. And we used to have these really great brotherhoods. And now we've kind of gotten away from that, where we idolize this like lone wolf, right? And so what we're really trying to do is recreate communities, powerful communities for men, so that they can show up as better partners for their wives.
So the whole idea, because you started MANTALKS, did you start it alone? Did you talk to other men? And did you say, okay, this is what's needed? How did you come to the conclusion that this is what's needed? And then from there, how did the whole thing start?
It's a great question. I actually started off wanting to build a website where I was going to find guys from around the world to write for us. But I knew nothing about a website. Like I knew nothing about building a website. But I knew how to be on stage because of opera. And so when I started talking with a lot of the guys, they were like, yeah, I guess I would share my story. I could do that. For sure I could do that. And, the more that I started sharing the idea of having men come up and be open and be honest and share their life's journey, guys were like, yeah, I want to hear that. I want to have those types of conversations. And women were like, you guys do that? I want to come to this. Yeah. And so our events are actually open to men and women. We want both genders to be there and be part of the conversation.
So how big is the event? And is this like an ongoing event, a monthly event? And how big, how ahead of time do you promote it? Yeah,
so our events are monthly, and we see an average of like 200 people every month. The one that we're doing in April will be a little bit bigger because of who we're bringing in. So that one will be about 450 people. And we're actually expanding, like we're launching in Toronto and Los Angeles. And so they're monthly, and they're actually hosted by Hootsuite, which is a local Vancouver company. Yeah.
So you bring in these men, and they have been so successful in their own journeys, and then they tell you their personal stuff. Like what kind of personal stuff?
Yeah.
How personal does it get?
So we have different themes, and not all of them have been like super successful. Like some of them are just guys that I know and I've met along my journey who have incredible stories. And we have different themes like relationships or sexuality or entrepreneurialism or purpose, like those types of things that are sort of cornerstones in men's lives. And then I'll find men who I think whose story will fit into it. And then they have about 20 minutes to share with the audience their journey. And they'll kind of go through like a timeline of being able to piece together what happened when they were a little bit younger and some of those what I call defining moments along the way that made them who they are today and some of those big obstacles that they had to overcome. So
according to you, what is a real man supposed to be like?
It's a really good question, right? It's actually one of the things that I'll be addressing in my TED Talk at TEDx Stanley Park in May, which is, our roles as men are really changing, especially within North American society.
Mm-hmm. You're not going to hunt for us anymore.
No, there's no hunting.
Yeah.
And the sort of the role that we play within society has totally changed. And, so to be a man today is a lot more diverse than it used to be, right? It used to be hunt, gather, provide, protect. And now there's all of these other things that are added in. Be emotionally intelligent, look after the kids, take them to school, help raise them. Like all these things that a couple hundred years ago we didn't have to deal with. And so I think to be a man today is to be emotionally responsible. I think that's really, really important. I don't think it's okay anymore to be cut off from your emotions and cut off from your heart and from your soul. And I think to be a really powerful man means to be living a life of purpose. And what that means to me is living a life that contributes back to something bigger than just yourself. I think that's where the main shift is, because before it was all about us. It was just about me. How can I get the biggest house and car and job? And now a really successful man is, how do I give back to something bigger than myself?
Mm-hmm. And also, do you think that the way that the women's role has evolved, especially in the Western culture where the women have really went out there and did things and completely changed their roles in society, do you think that has disturbed, what the man is supposed to be?
I don't know if it's definitely, I don't know if it's disturbed it, but it's kind of pushed our boundaries, which I think was needed. We needed a little bit of a wake-up call, and I think, as women have progressed and found more equality in our societies, it's now our turn to sort of do the work, I guess you could say, in order to create that extra space for real equality to happen.
Mm-hmm. But can there really be equality between men and women? Are we supposed to be equal?
It's a good question, and I think like my politically correct answer, which I think it's funny because you ask 10 women that, and half of them will say absolutely we should be 100% equal in every way, shape, or form, and the other half would say I don't want to be equal because my gifts are very different as a woman from a man's gifts. And I think it's about honoring those gifts now. And in that space, we'll find a deeper sense of equality. Mm-hmm. Because we will respect our gifts for, as a man and as a woman.
Mm-hmm. But do you think that there are still areas or certain definitions where this is definitely a man thing? Apart from, like peeing while studying. Definitely never going to achieve that.
I mean, technology is a beautiful thing. It could create something. I think that the more that we explore, it's incredible. Like, women are capable of such incredible things, and I think that what women are capable of is limitless, right? Just like what men are capable of is limitless. And men should be a part of raising kids just as much as women should be, and women should have the right to be equal in the work environment and run multi-billion-dollar companies just as much as men should. And so are women capable of doing the same types of things that men are? Absolutely.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Let's take a short break. U&I Talk Show with Louise UWACU. We love you, the authors, the musicians, the comedians, the entrepreneurs, and all other talented and inspiring people. Please contact info@uwacu.com to be a guest on the show. My people, we're back So how is it having women in the audience? And you're talking about men, and you know there are women in the audience. You always have women in the audience, and how does it change when you have women in the audience?
Yeah, I mean, we've always had women in the audience because I always wanted to be a conversation in a space where women could see that we were doing some work, you know, that we were progressing the conversation forward. And I think that women have valuable insight to offer, especially when we're talking about relationship dynamics and power dynamics and business and how we show up and how we occur. Sex, that's another part that we should both be having that conversation. And so I think it adds a ton of value because like we want to know what you're thinking. Yeah. Right? Like we want to know, we want to understand, and we want to know, you know, what do we do that supports you? How can we support better? And so it's a huge part of the conversation. We do have another part. We have a mastermind group that's for the men only that want to go a little bit further in the conversation and support each other, that brotherhood that I was talking about. So we do have parts of the organization that are, you know, like just for guys to really grow themselves and support one another. But the events have a very unique dynamic in that women are a part of it. So it's very different from like the traditional like men's circle, right?
Yeah, I see. And you know, you say you want to know what women are thinking about. We want to know what you guys are thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are guys thinking about? Give us a sneak peek.
Oftentimes we're like, what could I do here in order to like really further the relationship? What are we thinking? You know what? I think guys have become more complex, and we have really, the men that I've met are exceptional men, and we're thinking about how do we make a difference in the world? How can we solve some of the world's biggest problems? That's what's on our mind. You know, that fulfills us. We're thinking about how do we provide for our families? How do we build a great relationship? At the end of the day, I think, you know, our main goal is just success. We want to be successful, whether it's in our health, relationships, our business. That's what we really, really want at the end of the day. We want to be fulfilled.
And then what kind of women do men like? Is there a kind, or is there like a general thing like, oh, this woman, you know, it used to be a woman who can cook.
Yeah.
Do men still have that as a requirement, or is that, you know?
Yeah, not necessarily. I don't think there's like, you know, I'm going to be really geeky here, but you know, there's like the Lord of the Rings, and there's one ring to rule them all, and it's like the most powerful one. I don't think that there's necessarily like one stereotype or like one type of woman to rule them all. I think that different men look for different types of women, but you know, what we look for is somebody who's confident, you know, and somebody who you know, really respects themselves and their body and knows their worth. I think that's the biggest thing. A woman is extremely powerful when she knows her worth and what she brings to the table in a relationship and in a business conversation or whatever the situation is. I've never met a man that doesn't just love that, you know?
And then, you know, there's this classic saying about behind every successful man, there's a great woman. So what is the opposite of that? You know,
yeah.
Is there a great man behind every successful woman, or is that like a one-way thing? Is that something that women can do, men can't do? Like, how come there's no saying, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I shift the saying to beside every great man, there's a great woman. And I think that when we do that, it makes it so that it's vice versa. So that it can be beside every great woman, there's a great man or a great woman. Yeah.
Very interesting. So where do you see this going?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, like I said, we're launching MANTALKS in Toronto and Los Angeles in next month, actually, at the end of April, and then we're going to New York and San Francisco. We've had interest from Australia and the UK and Dubai, like all these crazy places. So my vision is that, you know, in 5 years, it's an international organization that's supporting men and women internationally.
So you still have a great voice,
Thank
the
you.
opera voice.
Yeah.
What are you doing with the voice? You're just going to talk with that voice?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Yeah, I mean, so I won't give it away now, but in my TED Talk, I do sing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about on U&I Talk show?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if that was part of the plan.
No.
I would have had to warm up. No, you know what? I haven't sang in like 4 or 5 years. And so when I'm speaking at TED, because it's all about redefining, masculinity and really looking at the roles of men in our society, I use singing as an example of how we don't have to buy into those same stigmas and stereotypes about men, that men aren't creative or artistic or compassionate or that they're not in touch with their emotions. And so I tell a little bit of a story and then I sing a little bit. So they'll have to come and check out the TED Talk.
I will definitely have to come and check it out. So, but it also gives you a great presence on stage because you already have that experience of standing on stage and speaking. Do you feel like you own the room when you're standing on stage and you're the man?
Yeah, it's more of like having a conversation with people. I think really effective public speaking, and even when I was singing opera, the best way to connect with the audience and land your message was to have a conversation with them. Whether you're singing in German or Italian or French or Russian, or if you're standing up on stage and public speaking, it's just like having a conversation like you and I. And that is the most powerful thing that you can do, because then it invites the other person in to your experience and what you're talking about.
All right, my people, let's take a short break and we'll come back to this conversation. U&I Talk Show with Louise UWACU. We love you, the authors, the musicians, the comedians, the entrepreneurs, and all other talented and inspiring people. Please contact info@uwacu.com to be a guest on the show. My people, we're back and we're still talking to the man, Connor BEATON. So, you say that some people say that you're a community builder, and then other people say that you are a disruptor of social norms. You're like destroying the existing social norms.
Disrupting is, throwing a rock in the pond.
Yeah.
Right? I think the more that we can disrupt this idea of, what a man needs to be, and, the more that we can disrupt the idea that men should be like these lone rangers and these lone wolves and recreate some actual bonds between men, we will all be we'll all be better off because of it. Yeah.
So, let's say you'll have children in the future, and then you'll have a girl and a boy.
Yeah.
Are you going to teach them different things? Because is the role of a man and a woman still going to be defined? Because at the end of the day, we are different, and we're probably different for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? But do you want to eliminate the differences, or what exactly do you see?
Not at all. I think, like I said before, I think one of the biggest and most genuinely powerful things that we can do is to respect those differences, right? And to understand them and to learn how we can kind of work together with those, right? It's like in Buddhism, there's the yin and the yang, right? There's the high energy and the low energy and the sort of like harsh and the soft, right? And not that that's describing men or women or anything like that, but the two together are what's really powerful. And so if I had kids, I would help them understand and experience both sides, right? Play the sports, do the sort of like masculine, the masculine side of things, and then do the really creative things and find what works for you. Find your sweet spot, right? And maybe it's right in the middle. Maybe it's more on the feminine side. Maybe it's more on the masculine side. And just be open to whatever is there and whatever is most authentically you.
And then when you're traveling, because you say MANTALKS is going to go to other cities, it's not just going to stay in Vancouver, it's going also across the world. When you're traveling, are men having the same issues, or is it locally different depending on the country and the culture?
Totally, it's a great question. It is locally different. What we deal with here in Canada, like we're very forward-thinking. Some people might not agree with that, but we're a very forward-thinking and progressive country. And we have a ton of diversity here. And when you go into other countries, like I had the pleasure when I sang of traveling to places like China and the Czech Republic and all over Italy and the States and down south, and it was incredible. But I think there's some general things that most men are struggling with like isolation, where they isolate themselves in order to really just put on this front. But then I think that there's, you know, some other things that are more area specific, where, you know, culture and religion and those types of things really play a big part, and politics in certain countries really play a huge part in disabling men from having these types of conversations.
So when you go into a culture that's still a little bit like clearly, you know, this is a men thing, and then you're coming in there with, oh, let's share, let's talk.
Yeah.
Are they calling you names?
No, because usually we, what I'll do is when I go into those spaces, I'll understand how to position it to them. So, you know, if we're going into a culture, or, you know, somewhere like Abu Dhabi, right, or Dubai, where, you know, the gender roles are very different there than they are here. Yeah. And so basically understanding what it is, where they're at right now, and how we can position what we want to accomplish. So instead of saying like, hey, let's all get together and share our emotions and feelings, like, I mean, I wouldn't say that here either, but I'll position it so that it makes sense to them about what we're wanting to accomplish. And like I said before, I've never met a man that doesn't want to develop himself, that doesn't want to move forward and progress. And if he doesn't, then he's got some real work to do.
Yeah.
Some real work to do.
Yeah. And then you're originally from Edmonton?
Yeah, Edmonton,
Alberta.
yeah.
Alberta seems to be like a place where men, you know, and the whole cowboy thing.
It's the macho man.
Yeah, the macho man. So how is it from Alberta, even here inside Canada, right?
Yeah.
Like very different from Vancouver to Alberta. How is it from your hometown to here?
Yeah, it's totally different. I mean, I call Alberta the Texas of Canada, right? It's like, you know, big trucks, cowboy hats, lots of oil, that kind of stuff, right? So it's very different, because I think in Alberta they're a little bit more closed off to some of these ideas, and yet a lot of the guys behind the scenes are, again, they're wanting to have these conversations because they're not happy. Right, they're not happy going and working on the oil rigs, or, you know, in the frozen tundra of northern Alberta. Like, I did that when I was 19. I worked in northern Alberta in like -40. It was horrible. Yeah.
All right, my people, it's so short, but it's very interesting. People can still come and check you out on your website and check out the Men Talks everywhere. And Connor BEATON, thank you so much. Men, listen to the men.